My top picks for week 4 of college football are Miami, East Carolina, Purdue, and UNLV, all to cover their point spreads on September 20th, 2025. In this video, I'll first explain to you my methodology and selection process, and then review my rationale for each one of these picks. What was I thinking when I picked Miami, East Carolina, Purdue, and UNLV? First, my methodology. In week 4 of college football, there are 49 FBS versus FBS football games. So my first step in the process was to narrow it down to a smaller number of the best matchups to then do further analysis. To do that, what I did was I looked at how well the teams covered the point spread in the previous weeks. Now, this spreadsheet has all 49 games. And I will put a link to this Excel spreadsheet where you can download for yourself. And I'll also provide a video that I posted earlier today that explains how to understand this spreadsheet and use it for your own analysis. So looking how well the teams cover the point spread, I also used ESPN's power rating to calculate a separate point spread separate from the Vegas point spread and look for discrepancies. For example, some games, the Vegas point spread and the point spread I calculated using ESPN's power rating was off by up to 8.6 points. Significant. So by looking at these, looking at the matchups where there was discrepancies in the Vegas point spread versus the track record of teams covering the point spread and the ESPN power ratings, I was able to narrow it down to like 15, 20 games, and I kept filtering down by looking at strength of schedule, the quality of the wins, as well as injuries, and I was able to narrow it down to these 4 games. In terms of looking at the injuries, I go to covers.com and I look at the injuries. Now, these injury reports are not as accurate as the NFL injury reports. So for the final group of games that I analyzed, what I did was I would look for preview discussions from local news sources, and they would usually give up-to-date information. Now, in these matchups that I'm talking about this week, UNLV injuries don't really play a role. However, in Miami, East Carolina, and Purdue, injuries do play a role. My source for the point spreads came from ESPN's website. They actually put the point spreads on the game preview. Also, VegasInsider.com has the information, as well as their history of covering the point, their history as well as past point spreads. So now let's look at the first game, which is UNLV. So to back up, I'll have to say that going through the 48 games, it took me several hours, and I kept staring at these games and looking deeper and deeper, and these were the 4 best. However, I'm not that enthusiastic about these particular games. I wouldn't say that they're sure bets. Maybe 60-40 would be my 60-40, 65% probability of success of covering the point spread. But the game that I like the best is actually UNLV. So in the case of UNLV, the main thing here is this: UNLV has been UNLV is 3-0. They have a good offense. They have a good turnover margin. Their coach is Dan Mullins, formerly of Florida and the SEC. So let me show you some. Let's look at the spreadsheet here. So in the case of UNLV, the point spread here that they had to cover is minus 2.5. So that means they have to win by at least a field goal. Using ESPN's SP Plus power rating, I calculated a point spread of minus 7.9, which means ESPN predicts that they should win by 8 or more points. So that's a deviation about 5.4 points. So that gives me a little bit of cushion. But then if you look at their past performances Against UCLA, they covered the point spread by 9.5 points, and against Sam Houston, they covered it by 8. So they've been outperforming the point spread. They're playing against Miami and Ohio, who in their last game against Rutgers underperformed the point spread by 13 points. Okay, so in terms of covering the point spread, UNLV has an advantage, and actually using ESPN's SP Plus power rating, there's actually a little bit of cushion in the point spread. So let me show you what I mean by the ESPN's power rating. So ESPN on their website, if you go to rankings, they have the rankings. They also have Football Power Index, but I like to use the SP Plus rankings, which are created by Bill Connelly, somebody that I've been following for a while who does sports analytics, especially college football. ESPN hired him a few years back. And every week he does a power rating. For example, Penn State is 28, Oregon's 27. And the way you use these power ratings is you find the two teams on the list, and then you subtract the numbers, and then you add 3 or 4 for the home field. So, for example, if Penn State's playing USC, Penn State's 28, USC's 19, the difference is 8. So, on a neutral field, Penn State would be favored by 8 points, and then for the home team, you would add 3 if it was a non-neutral field. So, looking at UNLV in their last 3 games, the games that I've focused on is they beat UCLA 30-23 and Sam Houston 38-21. They cover the point spread. Their quarterback has experience and he's performing well. I would say that they have a coaching advantage. Dan Mullins used to be an assistant at Florida, and he was also the head coach at Mississippi State and coached Dak Prescott. So I actually think that this will be a turnaround year for them. They also have they're good at creating turnovers, and their offense is very efficient, especially on like 3rd down and 4th down. Miami has been underperforming, and they're struggling on offense. So this point spread is only right now it's around 2. I expect that they will win and cover. They'll win by a touchdown or more. So now the next game. So this is the game that I think is the top pick. The next game here is Purdue against Notre Dame. And my pick is Purdue on the road plus 24.5. Not to win, but to cover. Purdue plus 24.5. And I believe that this is an adequate amount of cushion. So let's look at the history here. So Purdue is their points. They are plus 25.5. ESPN's power rating says that in the end, they would lose, but they would lose by only 21 points. So they would cover the point spread. So there's a cushion of about 5 points here. Against USC, they cover the point spread, 4.5. And against Ball State, they also cover the point spread. And so they've been outperforming their point spread. Now, Notre Dame, they've been underperforming against Miami and Texas A&M. Both good teams, but they've been underperforming the point spread. So if you look at the history of covering the point spread as well as comparing it to ESPN's power rating point spread, there's some value in getting in Purdue. Another thing that I like about this particular matchup is it's a in-state rivalry game. And in college football, those kind of things matter. And another thing that I like here is that after this Notre Dame game, Purdue has actually a bye week. So they have 2 weeks worth of rest. So they can go all out in this in-state rivalry game. In the case of the UNLV game, that particular game, injuries are not a factor. However, in this particular case, Purdue's relatively healthy. Notre Dame has significant injuries, especially on defense. Their star cornerback is out with an injury, and their kicker is also injured. And they gave up 40 points against Texas A&M. Now, after Purdue, they're going to be playing Arkansas, and it's an in-state rivalry game. The point spread is 24 points. Even if Notre Dame, I believe that Purdue will be competitive, and if anything, I think in the 4th quarter they will score some points if Notre Dame's ahead, and they will cover the point spread. So Purdue plus 24.5 in-state rivalry, with injuries on Notre Dame's side and Purdue having a bye week afterwards, so they can rest, so they can go all out, max effort. Next game is East Carolina. East Carolina is at home underdog plus 6.5 against BYU. So let's look at some of the math numbers here. So East Carolina, they covered the point spread against Coastal Carolina last week by 30 points. And then against North Carolina State, they covered their point spread and they were plus 6.5. So they've outperformed the point spread plus 30.5 in week 3, and in week 1, they outperformed their point spread plus 6.5. Now BYU against Stanford, their only FBS game, so I'm only showing the FBS matchups. They covered their point spread by only 3.5. So it looks like East Carolina might be actually undervalued when you look at their performance actually on the field with respect to covering the point spread. So let's look at the East Carolina. So NC State, they lost, but they covered the point spread and they beat Coastal Carolina and they 38-0. And then they're going to be playing at home against BYU. BYU, last year's starting quarterback, is no longer on that team. And so I believe here injuries do play a factor, and they favor East Carolina. Home underdog, East Carolina could win this game, but covering 6.5 is completely a reasonable prediction here. Again, injuries do play a factor here. Home underdog is also a big issue in college football. The next pick is Miami, University of Miami Hurricanes. It says here the spread's minus 7.5. I'll take that because in my original spreadsheet, I had Miami at minus 9.5. And ESPN predicts that they'll win the game by 11 points. So if the point spread is 7, that's a pretty large margin. So is it possible? I mean, Florida would be desperate. Is it possible that Florida is really struggling? And then Miami's offense is really has been really productive. So if you're worried about the point spread of minus 7.5, this is going to be at home. At least a reasonable bet would be Miami first half. So when you have a strong favorite and you're worried about the underdog covering in the fourth quarter, what you do is a first half pick. So Miami in the first half would be my pick. So looking at Miami, they last week against South Florida, they covered the point spread by 19.5 points, and they covered against Notre Dame in week 1 by 6 points. Florida has underperformed the point spread against LSU, minus 6.5 points, and against South Florida, minus 20.5 points. So South Florida was a common opponent. So that provides a little bit of a linkage there. So based on that, Miami, University of Miami, the U, first half would be my pick. So earlier today, I posted a video called Week 4 Cheat Sheet. And there I provide a link where you can go to my Google Drive and download the full Excel spreadsheet. And here, what I do is I have all the games, their point spreads, the ESPN calculated point spread, the deviations between the ESPN point spread and the Vegas point spread, and the past week's games with their opponents and whether they underperformed or outperformed the point spread. And that's available on my channel. Look for the video which I posted earlier today, Week 4 Cheat Sheet, where you can, if you want to do your own data analysis, to do it. So in summary, my top pick is UNLV. And the other picks, I think they're strong, a good argument for them also is University of Miami first half, East Carolina home underdogs, and Purdue to cover as a large underdog as in an in-state rivalry.